All right, and we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Brushfire Mind. It is 2100 on a Friday night, so this is where you should be. My name is Chris Lowry. We've got Cameron Anderson on the line with us, and I think our first topic tonight is going to generally be the GOP debate, and we'll move forward from there. So, Cameron, just your thoughts initially.
Well, I haven't had some time to digest coming back from the blow by blow we did the night of. Um, I don't know who I would say the winner was because I feel like there were some times when Ted Cruz really had the better of Donald Trump, and there were some times when I felt like Donald Trump really had the better of Ted Cruz. Um, I feel like Marco Rubio did well, and honestly, Chris Christie did well, but they weren't quite on Cruz and Trump's level. It would be one of the two of them that was the winner. I don't know which one I would say was the winner, and that would be my overall thought. That and it got old quick trying to trying to pit the candidates against one another. I do think some of that is relevant and important to the process, but you reach a certain point when it's like, okay, all right, you get it. They said these things about each other. Can we talk about you know? And it's so cliched because everybody always complains. Can we talk about the issues? Can we talk about solutions? And then it doesn't happen. But other than that, yeah, I don't know who the winner would be, Cruz or Trump.
Well, in fairness, on the question of, hey, we want to talk about the issues, which one of you is going to be president kind of is the issue. And with every single one of these guys, there's a lot of questionable shit in the background. So I thought Rubio and Cruz back and forth, they both pretty effectively made the case for how neither of them can be trusted as conservative candidates, especially on the immigration issues. So on that, I think Donald stayed pretty strong and uncharacteristically quiet throughout this debate. He didn't have nearly as much airtime as we usually expect from the Donald. Now, when he went off about trade tariffs in China, I was just sitting here clawing furrows in my desk as he explained things so very he explained a very complex issue in a very small amount of time, and then was accused of basically speaking circumlocutively. But quite clearly, what happened there is Donald made a very important case with a lot of very valid facts, and they were lost on several people who simply do not have the economic background and the trade background and the business experience to process what he was talking about. The level of, I mean, just the graduate level China trade knowledge that he dropped in the 2.5 to 3 minutes that he ran his mouth on the issue was, I mean, that was some major shit. And it got glossed over by these accusations. Well, you're just talking in circles. You just keep saying China over and over again. Well, no. I mean, he's stating numbers. He's talking about 50,000 companies leaving American shores to go overseas because of taxes and because of this. Um, he spoke about the Chinese habit of uh, artificially deflating their currency to complicate our competitive edge. It all very important, very very salient and pointed information. Now, Donald, he has a certain personality flair. He can make something very serious sound like a joke, or he doesn't sound he doesn't sound serious when he speaks, basically. So I think that may be working against him. But I mean, there's I really think he did very, very well in that debate. Um
So
Christie Christie's
go ahead.
points Christie made a point about, and it was really just a direct salvo against Cruz and Rubio. Like, hey, you're senators. You can stand around and talk and bullshit about stuff all day and then
Yeah.
never get anything done. But as the governor, I'm held accountable, and I've had to do this, 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 and this, and I've accomplished these things. Um, and then he mentioned that he just recently, I'm a pro gun guy. I just vetoed a bill to ban 50 caliber hunting rifles in New Jersey. Well, he proposed that bill too, so
Get it coming and going.
yeah.
So
So,
the stuff about Donald Trump and the tariffs, I think you and I have both been in commission sales, so we understand why you deliberately overshoot your position. And I mean, is Donald Trump really going to impose a 46% tariff? I don't I don't think so. And I don't think Donald Trump thinks so either. Just like I don't think he's actually going to keep every single Muslim out of the country. And I don't think he thinks so either. But it
but at the
you're
same
right. He
time, we cannot continue. I mean, we just cannot continue to bring in 1 million Muslims a year. I mean,
Oh, no, I'm not saying that either.
no, I know. I'm
But when you start with an outright ban and then actually move to what could be termed quote unquote the reasonable position, well, you give yourself a lot of wiggle room. So, and anyhow, I just think it's part of the art of the deal making, and even the things he says and does when he's on stage is part of that. So, and anyhow, I was just agreeing with you that he really did break down a very complex issue in a very short period of time, and then I noticed how the moderators really sort of mocked him for it. How like you just make everything more expensive. Well, I mean, yes and no. It's all fiat currency anyway. And, but certainly not enough time to get into that when you're only allowed what was it? What would they get 90 seconds for a response?
right.
90 seconds to
Yeah,
answer and
90
then
seconds. And God forbid we try to make a government educated fucking citizen understand that fiat currency doesn't represent a specific amount of money. It represents a specific share of a theoretical total quantity of wealth. But
yeah, we're already dealing with a player that devalues its currency to give itself an even bigger competitive edge over us. And the other thing that Donald Trump talked about, I realize this is largely anecdotal, but I have an aunt and an uncle, and professionally, part of what they do is travel to Asia and deal with various things. My uncle does some engineering stuff, and my aunt does some computer programming stuff. Uh, she does Japanese, and he does Chinese, and he has described in detail these factories that are like military bases that have got housing and little gift shops and everything that can just mass produce an unbelievable amount of stuff. Everything down from teeny tiny cell phone sized widgets all the way up to Boeing 747s. And he describes uh, these industrial complexes as not like a group of disconnected warehouses like what you see here with an industrial complex. No, the whole thing from the beginning was planned to be one big massive factory that actually covers like 4 square miles and looks and functions like a military base, and it's just that big, and they just can produce that much stuff on demand. So some of the things that he was talking about in the debate last night, at least anecdotally, I could say have a lot of validity to them. The sorts of things that they're building over there, and the sort of economy they are gearing up to be able to be, needs to be paid attention to, because they'll literally be able to flood the world market with anything.
Yeah, and that's something that people, the sheeple, don't understand, that that kind of economic power is a military power, that an economic attack can be every bit as devastating as a bombing run. That's why uh, before Obama and his fucking chuckleheads got their noses into the whole Iran conversation, sanctions is how we were dealing with them. So, because I mean that's economic power. Not everything has to be solved with bombs. I like bombs. I like bullets. They get the job done. But they're also expensive. When you could starve somebody out, when you could cut off supply routes, complicate logistics. That's even an active actual war. Those are effective maneuvers. Those are effective tactics. I mean, an armed combat engineer, what he does is called battle space engineering. They don't. They're not there building bridges. They're out there putting down minefields and shit. You don't place a minefield because you expect somebody to stumble blindly into it and get blown up. You don't drop a minefield to catch and kill the enemy. You drop a minefield to direct the enemy. A minefield tells the enemy where he can go. And that way you know where he will go, and you can plan based on knowing what your enemy must do. You can literally take away his ability to make his own decisions. So the economic thing, the fact that China can just flood the market, like you were saying, with anything, they can just choose to start making all the televisions we buy, and the sheeple will buy the televisions that China chooses to sell based on the price and on nothing else. There'll be no other point of question on what makes that decision. And the inability of the average citizen, and it's not just American citizens, the average person in general, to understand simple economics and mathematics is a very, very dangerous place for us to live when we live in a world where the people who seek to do us harm, and with China, I don't think there's, I mean, they're not Sunni Islams. They're not ISIS. China doesn't seek to hurt us out of some sort of spite or some sort of hatred. It's just strict functional competition. There's a finite quantity of resources that are necessarily shared between all persons, and this is the way that they've chosen to exact their share of those resources. So, I can't fault them for what they're doing. It's dirty pool, but it's effective. It's effective tactically. So that we as Americans need to be smart about that. Donald's right on that. And he's being argued. What's especially funny is that the people who are arguing against him, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Chris Christie, on these issues, these people are every bit the buffoon that they accuse Trump of being. They have an absolute absence of knowledge on the subject. Nothing in their lives has prepared them to have a conversation about economics in a meaningful and intelligent way, which is clearly evidenced by the debates that they've been performing in. Even when they seem to have had a very successful, a very good debate, it's simply not the case. They're not intellectually equipped to have the conversation. And I think that was evidenced very much when Donald started talking about China in particular.
So one other thing just really stuck out with me with the debate, and it's actually what I would say is Ted Cruz's weakest moment out of anything, period, in the campaign up to this point. Um, he filed the $1 million on the wrong form, and look, I understand that this $1 million was not completely unaccounted for. I understand that it was part of the taxes that he filed. I understand that. But a guy that's a lawyer that's argued cases in front of the Supreme Court mistakenly filed $1 million on the wrong form? I don't know. I'm a little suspicious of that.
Well, and if I understand his explanation correctly, I think what he was saying is that he was supposed to have filed it on both forms, um, and mistakenly left it off of one of them.
On
But
his personal income, he filed it, but what he filed with the FEC did not have it. And I don't know much deeper than that. I just know that he claimed it on his personal, but he didn't file it with the Federal Election Commission.
and yeah, I don't know how much impropriety we should perceive there, but
$1 million is a lot of potential
it
fucking
is.
impropriety.
It is. It's substantial. Um, but let's just go ahead for the sake of the conversation for at least a moment. Let's give Teddy the benefit of the doubt on that $1 million, and let's just go ahead and assume that he's completely legit there. I have this concern, and it's the exact same concern I have about the whole birther thing. Um, they just jumped on Donald and beat the shit out of him about the whole birther conversation, but Donald's right. He's right that all it would take would be for the Ted Cruz to be the nominee and Bernie Sanders to bring a suit and make a big stink in the papers that could turn a lot of voters. And that's the question that has to be answered in that. And that's my concern about the campaign finance thing is precisely that. All it would take is one of the Dems bringing suit or insisting the charges be followed, just going after, hey, look, there's some crookedness here. Look, crooked.
I don't think anybody wants to get into campaign finance with anybody else. I think that is a radioactive can of worms none of them want to open for any reason whatsoever. I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of why Ted Cruz has largely gotten a pass on it up to this point.
That's a fair point. Especially with Hillary in the race. I mean, she sure as hell doesn't want anybody looking at the books.
No. Where her money comes from? No. No.
And that's just disgusting. I mean,
Will she be indicted? Or will she not be indicted and dozens of directors at the FBI will quit and protest?
now there's something. There's something that has some legs. Um,
Does she get indicted and then Obama pardons her on his last day? I mean, because she knows where the bodies are buried, dude. She
right.
is not gonna go down by herself. And I'm telling you, she will get a pardon.
But you know what? I'd be all right with that if it was enough to disqualify her. I mean, Who was it? It was Rubio that said it, right? She is disqualified.
Well,
And
yeah,
I think that was a brilliant and correct statement.
she obviously repeatedly mishandled classified information. I mean, just grossly, over and over and over and over again. Absolute incompetence at best.
Right.
So yeah,
The
just no
best
way she's qualified.
the best we can say about her is that she's just a stumbling idiot that made some little mistakes because she doesn't understand technology. But we know
A
better than
few
that.
thousand little mistakes.
Yeah, for starters, how in the fuck do you make that many silly little errors? I mean, we're talking about thousands of incorrectly handled emails. Some 10% at least of the 60,000 emails. And like you and I were talking about earlier on the phone, Bernie had his little jab in their one debate. Oh, I'm tired of hearing about your emails too. And so is all of America. Nobody wants to hear about the emails. There's nothing there. It doesn't matter. Blah, 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 blah. It does fucking matter. Not everybody has the experience to understand the importance of what happened with those emails. But what she has done, each individual count of mishandling those emails is a felony. And it's a serious felony. It is a crime it is a crime at least on the level of murder.
Did you see one of the emails that have been released recently where she explicitly told a
Instructed
flunky
someone
to remove the header and then fax it over an unsecured line?
Yes. And that, I mean, that email alone, coupled with everything else we know about the rest of the emails, should be considered as the OPSEC breach equivalency of premeditated manslaughter. Period. No equivocations. I mean, mishandling of classified information like that costs lives in a very real and very severe way.
Oh yeah, and
not just lives. Not just lives. You know, we've got Black Lives Matter. No, some people are actually worthless. And it's not because not on the race or whatever, but there are certain lives that matter much, much more than others. And when we're talking about government's operational security and information security, the lives of the men and women who are actively conducting operations for the sake of our national security and the furtherment of our interests, their lives matter more than any other. And those are the people that Hillary decided to murder so that she could protect her own personal communications interests. And probably because I cannot think of another reason that a person who is not just in contact with and having access to that classified information, but is a state generator. You okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. Not small arms fire. Heard bang bang. Okay. But not just having access to, but being a state generator of that classified information. Nope, you completely derailed me. I lost my spot.
Bang bang. Look, Hillary's clearly absolutely guilty as fuck. And that one email should be enough to sink her.
I can't think of any other reason except that she's trafficking in the illicit distribution of that information. There's no other reason to take precautions to hide what information you're trafficking. So basically, at the end of the day, the only motive to conduct her business on a private email server the way that she did,
yeah, you want to hide the fact that
she is selling state secrets to someone she's not supposed to, or she's giving state secrets to, maybe trading them for additional influence, maybe buying political PowerPoints with them, or maybe just selling them for straight cash. Who knows why a person commits treason? But there's no other feasible motivation for her to commit the crime she committed in the way that she committed them. There's no other motivation. She has to.
Yeah, the only reason you want to remove the classified markings is so that you can work against the interest of whoever classified it in the first place.
And think about courtroom proceedings, in like with Lois Lerner, right?
Somebody else that should be in jail.
Oh my God. So with Lois Lerner, there was a conversation about how she had destroyed the evidence, about how evidence was destroyed in her case. And when there is conclusive, or at least a solid preponderance of evidence that asserts that evidence relevant to the case was destroyed intentionally by the defendant, then the jury is instructed to assume that that evidence was the smoking gun, was the absolute most damning evidence that it could possibly have been. Because what other motivation could a person have to destroy evidence in a case against them?
That was the murder weapon. It did have their fingerprints on it, and that's why it disappeared.
Yes. And that's exactly how the fact that Hillary's emails were ever deleted to begin with should be treated in absolutely every, not just in the court case, but in every conversation, in every mention of the topic. That is the preponderance. It is the case that there is no other reason for her to have deleted those 60,000 emails.
I mean, 60,000 emails. That is, at 100 emails a day, that is 36,000 emails a year. Who do you know that gets 100 emails a day? I mean, I'm sure if I check my spam folder.
Right. But no.
But as far as like, yeah, I mean, good Lord. And even then, it would take you a couple of years to get to 60,000. And 60,000 is what she deleted. She turned in another 60,000.
Right.
I can't even wrap my brain around that.
I can. She's been actively committing treason for decades.
No, that I get. I just mean that is a lot of emails.
You're right.
Shit. I used to have a fucking BlackBerry Curve, and that is a lot of fucking emails.
And God, and that's one of the most. This is one of the most difficult things about having an argument or having a conversation with a liberal, like on this topic. What else needs to be said?
Yeah, I really feel like you're trying to argue with me that water is not wet or that fire is not hot.
Right, like, exactly.
If at this point you can't see that the sky is blue, I don't know how to make you not blind. But man, there are roughly 40% of the active voters in this country would pull the lever for her in a heartbeat. And the fact that Bernie Sanders would even say, Of course, we're tired of your damn emails, man. What's in there on him that he doesn't want out?
Right.
Honestly,
How
because
what did it take to make him come around to be complicit in her crimes?
because that would be a winning issue for him if he wanted to put two torpedoes in her side and sink her to the bottom. That'd be it right there, because she's already got everything pulled up to the right. Getting hit from the left, man, I think it would sink her. And really, how many plates can she spin at this point? Like, how is she just not like going to bed with a glass of bourbon and Pepto Bismol every night? Seriously, I you're about to get caught, yo. You had a server in a bathroom? What?
And when I first started hearing him saying that, I was like, "Come on, guys!" You
I
know,
thought it was like a
I
pun,
know,
and I just wasn't getting the
yeah, I thought it
joke.
was hyperbole. I thought it was a joke, or it was some just talking head point. Oh yeah, let's just try and make this sound as bad as it. No, she had the server in somebody's fucking bathroom. I, I don't know what to do with that.
I do call it treason.
you know, and I mean
Yeah, so
that's another one for it. Okay, I've got a question. When did we stop executing traitors? When did we stop executing traitors? Even in the case of Bo Bergdahl, the the statements are basically that whatever the outcome, have they haven't resolved his court martial yet, have they? No, he's still on deck to go before courts martial. Um, but even in that case, it's been made pretty clear that he will not be executed for treason. Right? They let him cut a deal so that he's not executed for treason, and that's kind of it's kind of the biggie, guys. I mean, it. Look at Snowden. How many people have said? How many people who matter in the decision making process have said that? Well, yeah, we're going to get Snowden back, and once we get him back, we're going to try him and make sure that he serves time in prison for his crime. Wait, I'm sorry. Okay, look. Second Amendment leaves no room for interpretation. Every American is allowed to carry a gun, period. Under the purview of the Second Amendment, there's no room to say felons cannot carry a gun. It is unlawful for a law to be proposed that removes the carry of a weapon from a felon or suggests a background check or registration, any of that. Anything that makes it more difficult to carry a weapon is unconstitutional. And it's in black and white. It's inarguable. The only way you can change that is with a constitutional convention. Legally. Any law that exists that has anything to do whatsoever with guns is an unlawful law until a constitutional convention amends the Constitution.
I thought the first 10 amendments were immutable.
Say again?
I thought the first 10 amendments were immutable. In fact, it was considered that they would never be added to the Constitution in the first place because it should be self-evident based on the type of government that the founding fathers were creating.
Correct. Where that precedent was compromised was in fact with the addition of the 10 amendments because it set the precedent of amending the document. Even though there are provisions within the original articles to handle the amending of the document, the first amending of the document set the precedent that the document could in fact be amended, and it said it immediately. I mean, basically, as soon as the thing existed, it was amended. So there's that. But what I was getting at, that's an example that's easy to deal with because the Second Amendment is a small chunk of words that says something, and that something is very clean, concise, and not real hard to interpret. The question of treason. Article 3, Section 3 of the United States Constitution, so the judiciary, defines treason. It is the only crime that is defined in the Constitution. In fact, it's the only crime that is mentioned as a crime within the purview of the Constitution. And quite simply, it says that it requires 2 witnesses to bear out treason, and that the penalty for treason, which is defined as any action taken against the United States government, against the Constitution, or in the provision of aid or comfort to the enemies of the United States, is the act of treason. And the penalty for that act is death, period. No equivocations, no suggestions, nothing. The penalty is death. Not the maximum penalty. There's only one penalty. You don't get to, it doesn't say up to.
Pasco, you collect $200.
Right, you're done. Treason, death. Not maybe exile, death. So when did we stop executing traitors? Because the clear suggestion with all of we've got several cases of clear-cut treason in recent history, and we're just talking about the jail time. No, we should be talking about the execution, because that is the penalty for treason. Apparently, that's, I don't know.
That would be a deterrent. It's different when, I might go to prison for the rest of my life, or I might get executed. You're just playing for different stakes. Because if you go to prison for the rest of your life, well, there's the opportunity you could get out one day. There's not an opportunity to get undeaded. Like, it's
right.
That's the end of the road.
Which is one of the reasons I find that penalty so sexy. Dead rapists don't rape people. Dead murderers don't murder people. Dead terrorists don't blow up fucking buildings.
Yeah, I agree. I realize this is kind of tangential, but every time I hear, ISIS wants us to fight them. Well, fucking A, why does that mean we don't do it? If they're just as dead, and if their military equipment is just as broken, and if their cities are just as smashed, does it matter? Does it? No, good. I'm glad we all agree. They can have their moral victory in the afterlife. I can live with that.
Sometimes my kid wants a cookie. That doesn't mean I don't give it to her. Yeah. Terrorists want to be shot? Okay. I'm good with that. If that's what they want, that's a welfare program I can endorse. Terrorists want bullets. I'm more than happy to give them bullets. I have lots of bullets. I'd be thrilled to just pass them out.
It's hate speech to say things like this now, but I really think that we should dip our ammunition in bacon grease and advertise the fact that we've done that.
I agree. I actually fervently agree with that. And I say that because it is folly. It is utter folly to pretend like this is not a war about religion. Now, what we have, it's not a war between two religions. It is a war where one religion's religion, their dogma, insists on the execution of people not of a particular religion. It's like an a reverse of a Holocaust. So the Holocaust, you had a group of people who were not necessarily of any particular religion, I mean, Hitler was an atheist and destroyed state symbols of church. And I mean, removed crosses from churches, and there is no God, there is only the Fuhrer and all that stuff. And then they went after the Jews. Well, this is almost like the opposite of that. You've got one religion, and not even a whole religion. Okay, I'm going to tangent a little bit again. And, yeah, I know. They keep telling us that not all Muslims are evil, or not all Muslims are bad, or not all Muslims are terrorists.
Not all mushrooms are poisonous either.
Who gives a shit? Not all Germans were Nazis. Not all Russians were commies. Not all Chinese were Mao Zedong.
Well, and not all North Koreans
Not all
love
North Koreans are Kim Jong-il. Not all North Koreans are Kims. Most of them are. Most of them are actually named Kim.
That has to be so fucking confusing.
Oh, dude, it's over the top. There's only like a half a dozen last names in the whole country. And I mean, and I'm not speaking hyperbolically. I mean, you've got Kim, Song, Cho, Sung, Lee, and a handful of others. And you get a few oddballs here and there, but like 90% of them have one of 5 or 6 last names, and they're not all this, and it's not all the same family. It's that's a whole other thing. So with the Muslims, let's go with the most conservative estimate, 10%. You're talking about 180 million people. If only 10% of Muslims are dangerous, then that means that the radicalized portion of the peaceful religion, it means that the radicalized portion is roughly half the population of the United States. And I know I've said this on this show before. I've said it 1,000 times before, I'm sure. But how are our leaders ignoring this simple fact? Numbers fucking matter. And it's that simple. You cannot process math and stay liberal.
Brother, I think that is a good moment. I'm going to have to call it a few minutes early on you.
All right, brother. Hey, it's been a privilege. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Brushfire Mind every Friday night at 2100. Do please join us. We try to do this for about an hour. If the conversation gets good and interesting, I'll go all night. But tonight, we're done, and we'll hopefully see you next week. Signing off.